This podcast is made possible by supporters like you. Mahalo. And by Atlas Insurance Agency, Hawaii's largest professional agency, helping Hawaii navigate insurance solutions since 1929. More at atlasinsurance.com.
Hello, my kako. Welcome to a new episode of What's Good You Went? To start every conversation with that question, I'm Ron Mizutani. And today we're going to be talking about the risks and many rewards and the evolution of sports officiating. Insults, threats, intimidation, physical abuse, just some of the many risks sports officials face. Now, these incidents occur during, after games, and sometimes even the parking lots. A hostile environment marked by aggression from coaches, parents, and yes, even fans, has led to 70% of referees abandoning their roles. What makes the 30% come back? And why? I can't think of a better person to answer this question and so much more. A recent inductee into the Hawaii Sports Officials Hall of Fame, a dear friend of mine for many, many years, decades in fact, Tom Yoshida. Tommy, welcome to PBS Hawaii.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good to have you here, my friend. Before we go any further, as I ask all of our guests, what school you went?
I went to Lelehua High School.
You are a mule.
Yes, Central Oahu. I was born and raised in Wahiawa.
Yeah.
And I live in town because I didn't want to commute to UH like I did at college. So that's why I moved into town, and now I'm a permanent townie. But my roots always grew up in Wahiawa.
Once you are a Wahiawa boy, will always be a Wahiawa boy. By the way, this young man sitting next to you, he's a Lelehua boy too.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's when you guys are, in sync. Jesse Makadang Dang, another mule, pride of Lelehua. Sing your alma mater for me.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I'll do it in the very fast version. Hail to Lelehua, alma mater dear, sing a joyful chorus. Far and down, rally round our banner, we will never fail, hail, hail. Lelehua's alma mater, hail, hail, hail. It's really a short alma mater compared to a lot of the other schools, so I'm still surprised. 40 plus years later, I still remember it.
That's pretty darn good. Yeah, where you're working right now, they have a ridiculously long alma mater over up in the Heights. But we'll get into that in a minute. Were those the right words, Jesse? Yeah? Okay, thumbs up. Lelehua Muse. Back then it was obviously Coach Hugh back in the day, and the success of the Mighty Mules. It's always been a tight-knit community. I love Wahiawa. Shige's is a second home for me. Back then we had Big Way Burger, right?
Absolutely.
For some reason, this may get me in trouble, but Big Way Burger always had pretty girls working there.
That's probably true. I mean, for me, it was all about the food. It was about the terry plate, and they had like fried salmon back then. But it was, I was always telling my friends the other day. I mean, back in the 70s, a plate lunch was $1.70. Wow. That is hard to believe back then. But you also have to remember, Ron, there was no H2 freeway.
True story.
To get into Honolulu, you had to go through Kamehameha Highway, which was a 2-lane highway. So Wahiawa had its own, basically a close-knit community. We had theaters, we had restaurants, we had a fancy restaurant, and we had, the mom and pop coffee shops. So really, it was a close-knit family because Mililani wasn't quite established yet. Wahiawa was pretty much it.
It was it. And Schofield next by, Schofield as your neighbor, so you had that mixed blend of community. And of course, the sizzling hamburger steak over at Dots.
Well, that's why Lelehua football was really good, because we had the military kids that were over 200 pounds, which was really big back then.
Yeah, and now today that's average size for athletes. Speaking of sports, I want to dive into so many things. Your years as officiating, you started very early. Who got you interested in this arena, if you will, and why was it so intriguing to you?
Well, it's weird because I was a product of the 1970s television. So I always watched any kind of television, whether it's Saturday morning cartoons, Gilligan's Island, Hogan's Heroes in the afternoon, Checkers and Pogo. But one of the things in the 70s that was really big was a UH basketball team. And so they showed that on KGMB. And of course, everybody was watching the Rainbows. But for some reason, I liked to watch the officials and how they were basically in charge, because as we know, basketball was kind of kind of a Wild West, so to speak. And so the referees were sort of like Wild West. And so I was really intrigued by that. And so I actually got a whistle, and back in elementary school, at Ka'ala Elementary School, at recess, 3rd grade, I had the whistle, and I was the referee. I was in control. I knew what was going on. And so it was on that really my brothers and sisters told me back then that, you're going to be a referee and announcer, because that's what we did during playtime. And so I really transferred my passions from that to high school basketball. So at the age of 19, I started basketball officiating.
Wow, that's a fascinating story. I'm gonna share a memory with you, because I too was always fascinated with the official. So Monday Night Football was huge. Back then we'd have to do close your eyes time and watch it obviously in the evening. And while Howard Cosell and Pat Summerall and everybody else and Danny Don, they were like obviously the commentators. I was more interested in personal foul, clipping on the offense. So I would drive my mom crazy pretending to be, Howard Cosell. But more importantly, during the penalties, I pretended to be an official. So I was always like you, kind of intrigued and fascinated, but I didn't grab a whistle. I never did. And now that I'm a little older, although I know it's still time, I wish I had done that, because there's a part of me that, even though I played this sport, there's a part of me that loved the game so much from the rules perspective. And like you said, not so much controlling a game, but being in control of the health of a particular event, game. And that's where our mighty officials came in. So it was, you got that early in life at the age of 19, that responsibility that comes with that.
It's so interesting because I was not the jock, so to speak. So I did not really letter in football or basketball and things like that. I did letter in golf, but you don't have to be a jock to wanting to be official. If you have any kind of interest, passion, or want to watch and be a part of the game, and that's another reason why I wanted to be official, because I really wanted to be part of the game, because it was fast-paced, it was always going and moving here and there. Anybody can be an official.
You worked with some of the best in the business as a young official. I did some research. Sam Delos Reyes, one of the greatest of all time. That was one of your first games at the varsity level, right? I mean, those are some great names, mentors. Who else mentored you?
Well, I mean, as you said, that my first varsity game was at Roosevelt. Sam Delos Reyes, famous football coach, as well as official and things like that. My first college assignment, Pat Tanibe, one of the legends, as well as Larry Yamashita and Craig Peterson. Those three worked the Western Athletic Conference in the 70s. So it was an honor to work with them when I got picked up by the Western Athletic Conference. So, there's been a lot of really outstanding veteran officials at that point. And now it's important now, as a veteran official as I am now, to sort of help and mentor the young officials who might be interested.
40 plus years.
It's hard to believe.
I won't do the math, but those who at home who can do the math very quickly. But you've done it. You've been at this for a long time, and the Hall of Fame recently recognized your incredible touch and impact that you've had on community. What was that like, that honor?
Well, it was. I knew eventually it would come, but really, it was for me. I've always been a task-oriented person. So no matter how many honors and recognition I would get, the thing is I wanted to touch more people in terms of mentoring them and making sure that, that right now the average age of officials on the national level is in the high 50s, like 57, 58 years old. I heard a stat that back in the 70s, and the average college official was about 29 years old. So really, the age of the official has gone up. And so as a result, you're going to have more injuries and things like that. So it's important for me to try and teach whatever I can to help anybody who's even remotely interested in officiating, that no, it's not scary. Yes, there are distractions, but if you do a good job and if you believe in yourself, then you can be an official too.
There is not an ugly side from the official's point of view. Although, there's people who claim some officials try to be the star of the game, some umpires or whatever it is. But the reality is officials, one of the reasons I think we've seen aging out, if you will, and less youth is all the nonsense that some of our officials have to deal with. I mean, and it can get downright ugly. It can get downright criminal. And we've had our share here in the islands of officials who've been assaulted. Talk to me about that, and what can be done about that?
Well, it's interesting because even though I've had a very long and successful career, my first year in officiating, I called a technical foul on a coach, and he came after me after the game. I was going to my car. I said, I'm sorry, you're going to have to talk to my supervisor if you want to talk very specifics. And after I got in the car, he kicked my car, literally kicked my car, shook me to my foundation. I had to call my supervisor and things like that. I didn't know if I wanted to officiate after that. And so, but he assured me that, everything is going to be all right. Just keep working, do your next game. In terms of seeing assaults, I was part of a basketball officiating crew on the windward side during a high school game where a fan came out of the stands and tried to punch. Actually, he actually laid an arm or shoulder behind the back of an official, and I actually had to go to the police station to testify, to ID the guy. And so it's not a pretty sight, but, I understand the passion of the fans. It's just that, unfortunately, there's a false perception that, we get paid big bucks,
Right.
But I mean, you might get paid big bucks if you work at the NBA or the NFL, but we're in high school. We try and, it's really for the kids, and we enjoy it because we enjoy being it there. But clearly, if you're a young official and you get something that I had early in my career or see what I had to do later in my career, it's quite downright discouraging.
It is discouraging. I even remember, and I won't get into names of schools, but it was highly publicized because it was such a public. It happened on television. A athlete, actually assaulting a referee at a basketball game. I mean, literally during the game, took a swing and connected. I mean, so the passion is not just or intensity is also the student athlete themselves. And that's scary. I was at I want to say Hawaii Loa back then, but Hawaii Loa, not Shamana, but it was a game over at Midpack. And the referees got attacked by the fans. It was an all-out riot. And this is in our own backyard. And these guys tried to get out of there as fast as they could. It was an intense game, but it just got ugly. And I ask, why come back? What made you come back, even at the young age when you were exposed to that?
Well, it really starts off with two things. You have to have a passion for the game. You love the game. Part of it is doing it for the kids, and you want to be out there and be part of that action. But secondly, it's about the second thing is you really have to set goals. Because if you don't set goals for yourself in wanting to be an official, wanting to be a lawyer, if you don't set goals for yourself, you're not going to go anywhere. So early in my career, I wrote down on a piece of paper 5 goals that I wanted to accomplish. And part of it was be a college official, be hired in the Western Athletic Conference, work for a state championship game. So if I believe in myself and I have the passion for these goals, it's important to try and accomplish that. Because if not, you really, not going to get anywhere, even in this hobby or in life itself. So that's the reason why I continued to go. Until I was absolutely sure that I had no additional opportunity, then I would quit. But I'm happy to say I accomplished all my goals.
You're still at it. You're still at it. By the way, it keeps you thin, right?
Yeah, I mean, you do have to get out there. You do have to run, and you do have to be in physical shape. Now, in order to be at the higher levels, you're going to have to the looks, appearance, and fitness is very, very important. So it's important to be trim because, you're not going to believe a overweight official versus a very athletic-looking official.
Funny you say that. Nowadays, these NFL referees who, they have the microphones and they turn to the cameras. I swear some of them spend more time in the gym than anything. We're like, geez, this guy's yoked. But that's for another podcast. You still are very much involved in not only the officiating side, but on the rules side. You're a rules analyst with Spectrum Sports and still very much involved in the University of Hawaii statistician. I mean, that's when I met you back in the days of SID, Sports Information Department, and Eddie and everybody else over the great group that we had back then. What brings you back for that? When do you sleep?
Well, first, let me go back for a second.
Yeah.
I got hired to be a statistician when my classmate asked me, "Oh, can you take stats for a football game?" And I said, "Okay." And this was at Lelihua. And so I said yes. And of course, the head coach at Lelihua was the legendary Hugh Yoshida. So my classmate's uncle was Hugh Yoshida. Of course, no relationship to me, but that really got the bug started of me wanting to be a statistician. So when I went to college, I went to student employment just out of curiosity, and I saw on the board statistician. And that's when I met Eddie Inoue, who was the legendary sports information director. And so I began my statistics career from Lelihua to the University of Hawaii. And I eventually became assistant sports information director. And of course, we need another podcast for all the great stories I can tell you about that. But yeah, that's how it all started. And then opportunities came around where, hey, you want to work for University of Hawaii football stats. And so I worked with the legendary statistician Chuck Halter and Jim Leahy, who helped me along. And so, yeah, that started back in the 80s. And so it's been over 40 years again for doing statistics. And so it's been very, very interesting because I'm a journalist now, I graduated in journalism. I feel that by taking stats, that's a way to tell the story of a game. As a journalist, you try and tell a story to your audience. Through stats, I try and tell a story through numbers.
Accuracy, fact, all part of the storytelling this way. But for a numbers geek like you and I, it tells the story in itself. It's the first thing I grab every single day in the paper. I go straight to the stats. My wife just laughs at me because I look at bats. Who's got an ERA? Who had a stolen base last night? I mean, I'm just like, to this day. And I'm sure you do the same thing. And you've met some wonderful people. You've developed some fabulous relationships through the years being in that environment. But it also parlayed you and vaulted you to a new career as well at Kamehameha Schools. And you've been there almost 20 years. What are you doing there now? What's it like to be up at the heights, even though you still spend a lot of time back at University of Hawaii? What is that like?
Well, I worked at Kamehameha Schools at University of Hawaii for 11 years, athletic department, as well as the University Relations Office. It's interesting, my boss at the University Relations Office at UH was Rockne Freitas, and he moved to Kamehameha Schools in an executive position. I did not know that eventually I would be working with him at Kamehameha Schools.
Nice.
But I was basically, looking for something in the PR business. And I think Kamehameha Schools was really in a situation back in the early 2000s where clearly they were under the microscope. And they wanted somebody to kind of monitor all mentions about Kamehameha Schools. And if you're not familiar with Kamehameha Schools, they're more than just schools. They're the largest private landowner. And so there are a lot of eyes on Kamehameha. And so as a result, they hired me to sort of act as the monitoring eyes of what are things being said about Kamehameha. And so, of course, that's a full-time job as it is. And Kamehameha was being sued, and there was a whole bunch of things that happened. So there's been a lot of things that I've been doing with Kamehameha Schools. And, keep in mind, I'm not Hawaiian, so I would not be able to be a student. But I felt that I'm truly blessed to be hired there because not only do they have tremendous resources, but the people there are incredibly caring. And I will always remember and still have great memories when I'm with KS.
KS is fortunate to have you, my friend. Just knowing your work ethic and integrity, and I say this with tremendous respect, top notch. Always has been, always will be. I have to let the viewers know because maybe they have not seen you, or maybe they don't know, but they have seen you officiating a game. You're about authority out there, and your style is. I'm trying to think who back at Mahukona. I mean, all the legendary names. Who do you emulate? Who do you try to mirror, or is it just Tommy Yoshida out there?
Well, I'm actually old school, which means a lot of my influences came from those people. Dave Mahukona, Coco, or Pat Tanibe. I mean, literally, back in the 70s and 80s, you only officiated with two-man crew.
That's right.
So you had to, it was literally the Wild West and Survivor all put together. So you had to be in charge of that game because if you sort of let stuff go, they're going to eat you for breakfast. And so as a result, you have to have that authority. So if you know me during the regular daytime, I'm pretty much low-key quiet. But funny, because when I put the whistle and stripes on, I'm a totally different personality. And so I sometimes don't know who I am when I'm on the floor, but I know that I have to put on this mindset that you are the ultimate authority and you have to be impartial at the same time. So you really have to assume the role of an official, and that's fine with me because I know that I can go home and I can be that low-key self.
Good for you. And I can visualize you, Tommy, somebody driving the lane, and it's a tough call. It could go either way, and you are block, or offensive. Player control. It's so fun to watch you. And your energy and your, like I said, you know what you're doing as far as the rules of the game, but how you articulate it and respectfully articulate it. Some guys can get a little too dramatic, especially umpires who want to, wait and then ring them up. But you are respected that way, and I think obviously that's why the Hall of Fame said you're a shoo-in to this Hall of Fame, but also why you've had so much success through the years and all of the awards that you've received through the years. It doesn't come by chance. It comes by integrity and understanding of the game, and really the fact that you've given so much.
Well,
of
if
yourself.
you watch me now, I think I have mellowed out a little bit. I think the style of officiating has changed from the 70s, 80s, 90s to now. I mean, now it's a little bit more. You want to set a calm demeanor for the players. And that's very, very important because you don't want to be too hyped because then the players will get hyped. So part of officiating is you want to lead by example and show that you're calm, assertive, but not over the top. And so back in the 70s and 80s, you had to be over the top. But now it's about being calm, assertive leadership.
Well said, because I can visualize that as well, and the importance of that, especially if you have a very intense crowd, they'll feed off your energy, and whether it's good or bad, it can intensify either direction. That 30% drop, though, in the average age being well over 50, how do we fix that? Or is there a solution to that? I see a lot more of these campaigns and camps for young officials who are interested, a lot more advertising, social media saying, hey, come out and give this a chance. You don't do it to get rich, but it can be rewarding in so many ways, right?
Yeah, it's funny because this week was the first week that we had to train new officials for the new season. And so at the beginning of the meeting, I asked everybody, can you introduce yourself and where you came from? And we had like about 15, 16 people. About 3/4 of them were military.
Nice.
The rest of the percentage was basically, my kids have grown up, but I go to their games. And so I've always been curious about what officials see. So you can see that's the current demographic of people coming on board. But what we really want to see is we want to see either those young high school or college athletes who, who can't make a pro career out of it, the possibly wanting to stay in the game, and part of it is being an official. But the negative factors is that, when you sit in the stands, you get to hear all of the catcalling and all of the swearing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, that is something that we need help on. It's not only that we need to recruit officials, but we need our athletic administrators as well as other groups to sort of, tamper down the negativity. Because, granted, you're paying your $5 to call a game, but we'd like to believe that you're here to support your students or your school and things like that, not necessarily to boo the referee. Now, we're out there and we're doing our best to kind of, make sure it's a fair game and things like that. And, we're going to make some bad calls. I mean, we're not perfect, but, I think if they recognize that we're trying to do our best job out there, then cheer the action and cheer what's going on out there and not necessarily against the officials.
There's a sense of and a culture of entitlement, I think, sometimes with parents, maybe even some coaches, that kind of creates that environment and fosters that in a very negative way. But anybody who's listening now who has been to an ASO game or to a basketball or PAL game and maybe even have stepped over that boundary and said, Hey, Zebra, come on. What are you, a St. Louis grad? I mean, stuff like that. I mean, I'm sure you've heard it all. We need to do a gut check, And I know there's at many games now, there's a creed that they read, let the players play, let the coaches coach. A lot of it is also just enjoy the game. And I think sometimes we forget that as fans.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the thing is that you need to continue that, at least on a broader scale.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, the government has recently, posed criminal penalties against assault on officials. I think Governor Green signed a bill last year that became law. But, it's not just that. We just need a general overall broader awareness of what the role is. Now, we're only not talking about officials. There's so many coaches that are leaving the game because they hear the same negativity about how fans are yelling at coaches, oh, play my son or play my daughter and things like that. So even coaches are becoming a rare breed. And so, I stand not only for the officials, but for anybody who supports, sports in general. Because if you don't have a coach or you don't have official, we can't have a game. Yeah. So I think from a broad standpoint, let's support, all of these volunteers because we're not getting paid big bucks. We're almost volunteering. And so as a result, let's support these people that are trying to do their best for your kids that are listening out there.
Yeah, whether it be, ASO, PAL, or high school or college. Everybody out there's got the right intention. And, we've seen coaches get assaulted in parking lots too, right here in our own backyard. I won't say where, but just horrible, and that causes stress. It causes fear. And now with social media, there's public criticism on social media. So how do you balance all that? Compensation? Can we increase compensation? I mean, those are some of the questions I think that can help recruit new blood, if you will. But at the end of the day, you have to want it. You as an individual, and you had that passion from the third grade.
Well, when I started, I was in college. I was at the University of Hawaii, and I appreciate the money that came in as a result. So as you get older, it becomes less about the money, and I think more about wanting to make sure that that the kids understand that you're trying to do a job, and we're not going to be right all the time, and half of you will be mad at us, half of you will be happy with us. But, a sign of a good official is if you're concentrating on the floor, you don't hear the crowd. And so once you start getting to that higher level, you don't hear what the crowd is saying because you're concentrating so much on what's happening on the field. Now, even after the whistle blows, you have to still watch the action because you never know what's going to happen. So a really good sign of official is making sure that the kids are there from the time you get on the floor to the time you get off, and that the kids are enjoying their experience. If they're enjoying their experience and nobody talks about you, then you've done a good job.
You've done your job. Speaking of job, I mean, let's be very frank and remind folks who are listening. The officials out there, they have full-time jobs. Yours over at KS. I remember Todd Poe was the chair of the city council, and he was still officiating games in college and high school. Still does, I believe. Todd still does so. Again, they're not doing it as a full-time job or as a career. Some do go on to that, but they have full-time jobs. They're just giving back to the community.
Yeah, and sometimes we have to take vacation time if we want to reach to that higher level. I know Todd, and he's done, NCAA tournament games on the Division II level. And so, he's one of those very successful. I, fortunately, did work in Division I, Division II, and so I've had to take time off. But yeah, for them, you're right. We have full-time jobs because we know this is not really sustainable. But, we believe in, when you get to that next level, because one of the goals I had was working high school state championship game. One of my mentors told me that in order to get to that level, you need to work at a higher level so that you be perceived as a college official working a high school game. So really, to get where you really want to go, sometimes you have to go higher than what you really need to. And so that's one of the reasons why I continue to go as far as I could, in this case in college, in Division I.
A couple of silly questions. How many whistles have you gone through?
Surprisingly...
Do you have a favorite?
Well, the evolution of the whistle has changed. Before they had the little cork in the whistle, and then now they've invented, back in the 90s, they invented the whistle without without a P inside, so it creates that shrilling sound. I would say probably 4 to 5. There are some whistles with mouth guards, and over time I've sort of eaten that up over time so that they would wear out. So yeah, about every maybe 2-3 years I would use a new whistle. So probably in the neighborhood about 8 to 10 whistles I've used.
Through the years?
Yeah.
Well, that's not too bad. Anybody ever accuse you of swallowing your whistle?
Well, that's been a very common way of saying that you're not calling enough fouls. And, that's fine. I get that. But, I've had some stupid things said to me over the years, but, that's just one of them.
Yeah. You know what? As a fan, and I'm going to be honest with you, you rib the referees, and I still do it at UH Wahine Volleyball. Come on, Dixon, make a call. Sorry, Dixon, if I pointed you out, but it's all – it can be really bad. But if, you have relationships, I'm sure people know you by name. And come on, come on, Tommy, get your whistle, wherever it's at. And some of it, you just got to smile, and that's part of it all, right?
Oh, yeah. No, there's no question. I mean, I still hear that, but it doesn't bother me. It's where it gets concerning is when they cross the line.
Yeah.
And so when a fan can say whatever they want. I mean, that's not bad. But when they start standing up and getting closer to the court, then as an official, we can't ignore that. We have to make sure that athletic administration is aware of that, because it's not only about the safety of the officials, it could be potentially safety of the players, because if somebody gets on the court and somebody's running down the floor, they could get hurt. And so as an official, you still have to work with everybody else to make sure the playing surface is fine. But in terms of if you say stuff, that's fine. As long as you don't, in football, I know if you're talking racial or things like that, that's when we have to, put a stop to that. But yeah, you can say whatever you want, but just don't make it personal.
Yeah, don't try not to.
Yeah.
You little zebra. All right. Well, last thing, I ask you to make maybe a recruitment, somebody out there young or even older that's contemplating and say, hey, you know what, I want to give that a chance. What do you say to them?
First of all, I think there are a lot of caring officials out there. The people that go out there on the floor really care about the game as well as the kids. I go out there because, I think I've seen almost everything that has happened in a basketball game. But you know what? I still learn. I love working with the fellow officials that I have. I love going to high school games. I always say to myself, high school is the last avenue where you see the 5'1" kid go and play basketball. And that's the thing you love to see out there. It's not for money. It's not for scholarships. It's not for professional pay. At the high school level, you really, really get to see what pure sports and participation is all about. And you want to be a part of that. You want to make sure that it's a positive experience. And if you want to be a part of that, they used to have these marketing terms of get in the action, be part of the action. And I think in many ways you are part of the action. If you do your job and if you do your job well, you will be there for a long, many years. And you have a lot of people like myself, we will support you in whatever you need to be a good official. And so I've always said to all of my officials that I've mentored all my years, if you have anything that you need to contact me with, call me, text me, do whatever you need to do, because I will help you, because a lot of people helped me be where I am today. Will be just the same. I will do that for you if you put in the time and effort, because if you have those goals, I will help you get there.
I echo that. If you're willing to learn. I was blessed learning from Barbara Marshall, Barbara Tanabe, Ray Lovell. I mean, in the industry that I'm in, Les Kiter. I'll give back as much as I can, and I can hear that in you. Tommy Yoshida, you are a gem, and you're a gift to the islands. Continue reaching out and touching folks in the way you do. And again, gosh, we've known each other almost 40 years. Congratulations on your recent induction to the Hall of Fame and all of your success. Go Bows.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, folks, mahalo nui for joining us. Join us next week. Another episode of What School You Went. Until then, ahui ho.
What School You Went is a PBS Hawaii production. Music by Taimane Gardner. If you enjoyed this episode, let us know on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and tell your friends. You can find us on pbshawaii.org and everywhere you get your podcasts.